What is up, people, and happy Friday. Welcome back to Chaotic Vibes Podcast. This is Jen, your host. I hope everyone is having a great Friday because you know what? You made it. You made it to the end of the week, and that's something to celebrate. So here we are. I actually wanted to tell you a little bit about a book that I was reading because y'all know I like to read. I'm a book girly. And this month I actually read 4 books. My goal was to read 2 books a month, and I read 4. And when I tell you, my mind is shook after each book. Like, I think people forget that when you read books, you have to use your imagination. So it's very different than watching a movie. In fact, the other time I was reading like a thriller and I was like, my heart was racing, and my husband like tapped my shoulder and I kind of jumped, and he's like, really, you're gonna get scared because you're reading? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like it was just like, I was so into the book that I got a little scared. But anyway, though, the book that I was reading is called Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman, and it's like a thriller, but it has like romance in it as well. And like, I don't want to say the whole story, but there was like a line there. So they go through trauma and they hated each other in the beginning, went through trauma, kind of trauma bonded, and then they end up falling in love. And the problem was that the girl was so traumatized that for her, it just kind of seemed like, it's hard to say without like telling the whole story, but it just made it seem like she was having a harder time coping. And so for her, showing love was very toxic. And it made me think, I was just like, we know that divorce is very normalized now. And sometimes I think, divorce is very much necessary. I've said this before. I think when 2 people are so toxic together, then it's important to separate, even if you have kids, because like I said before, I'm a product of staying together for the kids. And I can tell you, I have more trauma from that than what I think. I mean, I can't say for sure, but what I think would have been if they would have just separated. And so divorce definitely is something that I am for if the relationship is toxic. But on the flip side, I think that divorce is just so easily available. In fact, I've heard people say that it's harder to get a marriage license than to get a divorce. And that's kind of sad. I feel like people sometimes they just end up giving up, and they don't realize that in a relationship, there's 2 people with 2 different backgrounds and 2 different personalities. And so when you get married, you're bringing these 2 things together, these traumas, these personalities, these characteristics, and it's a learning journey, right? Like, you have to learn to adapt to the other person and to help the other person, but you can't do that if you're not well yourself, right? And so that was one of the lines in the book. It said, that there was no way that she was going to be able to love him unless she loved herself. So I thought, let's talk about it, because y'all know that I like to use my podcast as a form of therapy for myself, and also just kind of, share stories, because I think it's important that we all realize that although we have different pasts, we're not alone in what we're going through. And so sharing it, I think, has been so therapeutic for me. But also, I know that listening to podcasts, I really resonate with some of the topics, and I think that it helps me feel better that I'm not the only one. Like, am I the problem? Maybe in this situation. So like, for example, for me, my love language is very much physical touch, but it also is words of affirmation. So I feel like I constantly need to be shown and also expressed that I am loved, right? And I think back to when I was in therapy, and why do I feel this much? Like, why do I need that constant approval, right? And it just stems back from like anything else, your childhood, right? So I've mentioned before that I've never really had a close relationship with my dad. Without going into too much detail, I've always just never wanted him around me. I didn't want him like close to me, and so My mom, on the other hand, was very strict. And so she was dealing with her own traumas in her head and didn't really express her love for us. I mean, I know we knew that she loved us, but it wasn't like fully expressed. She did it in her own way, right? Taking care of us, making sure we had everything we needed. And so I think that I was always very much starved for that like fulfillment within me. And like growing up, and I've talked about this, I think, in another podcast, but I was just like the ugly duckling. Like I didn't have like, when you start going through middle school, like you start changing and you have this awkward phase. And I remember thinking like, wow, everybody is, going through puberty. Everybody's like changing and everybody's so pretty. And meanwhile, I'm over here sitting like a baked potato in the corner of the class, didn't know where I like fit into all of this. And so obviously, I don't know if it was insecurities or whatever, but I didn't have that attention like I was noticing that everybody else had, all the other girls, right? So then that led to my high school, right? And so in high school is when I met well, I had another boyfriend before that, but my boyfriend that I've talked about before, the reason I'm in Arizona. And I think that I gravitated towards him just because he was coming after me, basically. So it wasn't the fact that I liked the personality. It wasn't that I liked how he looks. For me, it was just he gave me a little bit of attention, and then that was it. I was hooked because I didn't really have that attention before. And so I was so starved for it, I think. And thinking back on it now, because he was older, and I've talked about that he was older before, I don't know if he did it intentionally, but I do think that he took a little bit of advantage of me, just being so naive, being so starved for attention. I remember one time he cheated on me, and I was just like beside myself. Like I was so upset. And that same day I was over it. Why? Because he said sorry and he gave me a hug and he gave me a kiss. And then, that was that. And I think back and I'm just like, this is so sad. Like, what type of self-respect did I have? I didn't have that self-respect. And so getting older, my mom moved me over here. The first guy that I started talking to here, that ended up being my son's father. So again, didn't really mesh with him too well. He gave me a little bit of attention. I fell for it unintentionally. I don't think I was like, oh, this is what's going on. I think that it was something that I wasn't understanding in the moment, but anybody who just showed me that attention and was consistent, they just won me over just because of that, not because we had anything in common or anything. And of course, you think about it, we ended up getting married, and where does that lead? It's just common sense. It's not gonna end well. Fast forward to a few years later, I ended up, not meeting because I already knew him, but my now husband. And maybe I got lucky that it just so happened that we had a lot in common, but I was just constantly chasing that validation. And I just, have you ever felt like just no matter how much love someone gives you, because I think that everybody gives love in their own way, right? So I think that's important to note as well, is just knowing each other's love language and understanding that sometimes you need to do what the other person thinks is showing love. Otherwise, they won't feel it, right? But it's just never enough. Or maybe like you're just constantly chasing that validation. Like, have you ever been in a relationship like that where it's like you're just constantly needing like that, just to affirm that they love you or to affirm that they're there for you. And that just becomes so mentally exhausting. And honestly, damaging to your mental health. So today I kind of wanted to dive into why we can't truly love someone until you love yourself, and how childhood trauma, self-worth, and the need to be loved all play a role in that. So I hope you stay with me. And while you're here, tell me I'm awesome and that you love my podcast. I'm just kidding. Also, on a side note, I will never I will never be able to say just kidding without thinking of, do you know of Astrovino? Yes, Astrovino. Do you know how many, I think she traumatized me. There's so many things that now I cannot say because it makes me feel like her and it gives me the ick. I give myself the ick by saying that. Anyways, that was one of the squirrels of the day. Maybe you can catch a few more squirrels in the episode and see how many I had today. You know what we should do? We should do that. Throughout each episode, try to catch the squirrels that I follow and let me know how many you catch. Anywho, let's get back to business. I was talking about validation. So validation is just a confirmation about what we are as a person, like what we're worth. And so I think there's a difference between internal and external validation. So external, of course, as the word expresses, is out of our control, right? We want somebody else to tell us that we are beautiful, that we are awesome, that we have the best podcast ever. And I think that in our time or our society, it has become priority. So external, it just becomes more important than the internal validation. And this becomes so toxic. For example, I felt validated when I was in a relationship. Even though I didn't like the guy, even though, I knew he was bad for me, if I was in a relationship, I felt like I was worth it. Like somebody, you know what I mean? Like I just knew my worth was related, and I say "knew" in quotes because that's what I thought, right? My self-worth was based on if I was in a relationship or not, which is why I usually went from one long relationship. So my relationship in California was actually 3 or 4 years, and then moved here and then ended up in this relationship, which is, of course, got married. So 2 years there. And now I've been with my husband for 14 years. So just needing to be in a relationship back to back to back. Did I give myself time to be alone? No, because for me, that just showed that I was worth nothing if I was not in a relationship. And I think about other people, like I got really lucky in a way that I was never I was in toxic relationships, but they were never physical. It never led to domestic violence. And I'm so thankful for that. But I think of all of the women and men, because this is also for men. I think about all of the people that are in those relationships. It's so easy to be like, well, why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't he leave? And it's much more than just getting up and going. I think it's connected to their feelings of themselves, and it feels like a failure. It feels like another ruined relationship, and it just becomes so toxic. And brings me back to another book I read, which was from Colleen Hoover, It Ends With Us. And I've actually read It Starts With Us as well, but the movie was so good. But if you love the movie, the book was 10 times better. So read the book. But the whole point of that was like just getting out of that domestic violence relationship and the cycle, how it becomes a cycle unless you break it. And so I think it's very hard to break that cycle, and it does have to do with how you feel about yourself. Think about social media. Like I am truly, truly grateful that we didn't have as much social media back when I was growing up, because can you imagine? I'm a hot mess right now. Like I was already having issues. Can you imagine if there was a TikTok back when I was in high school? Forget it. I'd be done with. Like I am so thankful that I did not have that, right? But now these kids have social media, and that's what it's all about. TikTok is all about the likes. So somebody who internalizes that is easily swayed by the fact that, oh, nobody likes my video, dang, I must be bad, or I must be ugly, or I must be this and that. And that's not, it's so damaging to your self-esteem. And it becomes confusing, right? Like, so those likes or that attention, it starts to feel like love. And that's not what love actually is. And so you tend to have a void, and you're always trying to fill it in whatever form. And sometimes people take it in different forms, right? Filling a void with substance abuse, filling a void with relationships, filling a void with food even, And so that's where all of this residual effects take place. So I always bring it back to childhood, because that's just something that I learned not only when I was in college, but also going through therapy. Your childhood and the connections that you have in your childhood have a huge impact on how you are as an adult. Everything that you go through as a child could potentially, did I just make up a word? Potentially affect your decisions as an adult. And those relationships or those experiences, they create those attachment styles and self-worth. In my case, I had parents that were emotionally unavailable, I feel like. And so I think that it could be both ways, right? You could be drawn to partners that are the same way and they're just kind of distant. Or you could end up like me, who is a clingy wife and always all over my husband. He gets sick of me. He gets so sick of me. But you know what? 14 years later, right? He better get used to it. On the other hand, if you grow up like with parents that measured, or that you felt like they measured their love for you based on your actions, or like if you had to earn it, you know what I mean? Like if you had to be really good at a sport, for example, and you felt more loved in that way, then you might end up in relationships where you just have to always prove your worth. So let's take a second. Let's take a second to think. And I'm serious about this. I want you, whether you're driving in the car or doing laundry, whatever you're doing, I want you to reflect on your relationship now and what you think, or what experience in your childhood you think it's related to. I really want to know, you guys. I'm serious. I'm actually currently writing this down because I am going to put it on the either TikTok or Instagram, because I really want to hear your stories. Like, I want to know what attachment relationships you have and what caused it. And I've said this before, I'm just like so interested in all of these things. Like, I wish I had the time to go back to study all of this, but also for our children. Like, I feel like we need to learn and know better so we can do better. And I don't want my kids to have these types of relationships. So please, please, please share your stories. I want you to think back and reflect on your childhood experience and how you think they affect your relationship. Maybe even if that experience affected your self-worth or your self-love. Because I think that when you don't love yourself, it just becomes so easy to tolerate less than you deserve, because you think that is what you deserve, right? You don't think you're worth much, so you don't think you deserve much. And I think that if you have that sense of worthlessness, or if you don't feel worth it, if you don't feel valuable, then most likely you're going to accept people who behave badly towards you, because you're probably thinking, well, that's what I get. This is what I deserve. Let me just say, there are way too many. This might be another squirrel, okay? But I am a crime junkie. Like, I am watching all of the documentaries, right? Because this is like an interest of mine, like just the human brain and nature versus nurture type of thing, which, by the way, I think it's a little both. That is my opinion on that. Try to change my mind. So I like watching all these documentaries, right? And like crime shows and all of that. And I think it's because it is interesting to me to think why people do what they do, right? So you look at a relationship, for example, and we're all guilty of like judging people, right? I'm guilty of seeing a relationship that is so toxic, and I'm just like, why don't you just leave? Like, what are you doing? Why are you allowing that to happen? This person keeps cheating on you, and you keep forgiving them. Like, we tend to judge, right? But it just is so much deeper than that, and it becomes a cycle. It really does become a cycle. You just end up with these relationships that are so toxic, and they continue to break you down, and you are accepting that behavior because you don't think you're worth it. So they continue to act this way. Oh, now I remember my point about the crime junkie situation. See, my squirrels are coming. They're coming for me this episode. But the reason I brought that up was because I've learned there's so many psychopaths in this world. It is actually quite scary. Like, maybe this is a little extreme, but when I'm driving down the freeway, like one time I was driving down the freeway and I was telling G, I was like, I'm sure that there's probably somebody getting kidnapped in this moment in this freeway. And maybe that's a little extreme. I know I'm overthinking things like I usually do, but there are so many psychopaths that thrive on people like us, people who have a low self-worth, that don't have that self-love, who do not defend themselves, and that they allow this behavior. They thrive on that. To be completely honest, we basically are a free meal to them. Like, we are do as you please with us because this is what we feel we're worth. So going back to the book that I was reading, the guy ends up breaking up with her because she wasn't able to love herself, and so he obviously was not able to love him. It was just a toxic relationship. So it really just opened my eyes. Like, we all know this, right? But I think that sometimes we forget. We're so caught up in our daily lives that we don't think about these little things. And in therapy, that's what they teach you, right? They tell you to be in the moment. They tell you to look at 5 things. What colors do you see? Because you're trying to be grounded. You want to ground so that you are in the moment and you start recognizing all of these things. So there's a lot of self-awareness that has to go on before anybody breaks the cycle. Because like I said before, like, we are trying to be better for our kids because, in all honesty, the last generations, all they did was they repeated the patterns. So, and I'm not saying everybody, obviously this does not apply to everybody, but I feel like in my case, my mom did what she could based on her parents raising her the way they did. And my grandma also did what she could and what she thought was best. So it's not intentional, all of this damage that is being caused, but I think that that's why it's so important for us to speak on it, because I personally do not want to continue the cycle, and I don't want my children to grow up thinking that they need, for example, at my girls, I don't want them thinking that they need a man to make them feel like they're worth it. They're worth it, and they have people who love them, and until they start to see that, then I'm not going to give up. Like, I have to find ways to teach them that. But it becomes so hard because I think that now I am trying to teach myself, right? And each of us are trying to teach ourselves how to move past whatever mindset we had before. So in this case, you know, we have to learn to tell ourselves that we are worthy of love, that our feelings are valid, and, you know, give ourselves that security that we might not have received when we were little. Another thing is, I think that, and this is where it gets really tricky for me, I've always said this, that the boundaries, right? Like, what are the appropriate boundaries? For example, we don't want to teach our children to just say yes to everything. For example, we were taught, don't ask me why. If I said no, it's no, and that's it, period, right? And for me, I get to that point sometimes. Why? Because that's how we were raised. And so it's like retraining ourselves to be like, obviously, we don't always have the time. I've said this in the last podcast. If the building is burning up, I'm not going to sit there and explain to my daughter, hey, this is how fire is made. Absolutely not. I don't have the time for that. We got to get moving. We got things to do, like obey. And then later on, maybe when everything's a little more calm, we can talk about it, or whatever the case may be. Or if I'm heated, she's heated, we're all heated in this house, I'm about to explode in this house, stop, do what you got to do, and then later come back to it. But I think that it's so important to come back to it and touch base and say, listen, this is why I said this, or this is why I did this. So I don't know. It's just so hard. Like I've said before, there's no handbook for parenting, and we're all just trying to do the best that we can. But I think that it's super important to teach boundaries for children, because you don't want them to learn that they have no say in the way that they're treated, number one, in the way that they are, obviously physical boundaries, right? And I heard this in a podcast one time, and it really just opened my eyes. Like, I had never thought about it that way. But I remember, like, for example, my dad. My dad always was trying to, like, I've always said this, right? Like, I don't know why I could not be around him. I don't know if it's his negativity and I'm just too sensitive to it. But, like, he would come around and he'd want to hug me. And I would just be like, no, like, I'm not comfortable with it. I don't want you kissing me. I don't want you, like, that kind of stuff. And I would get in trouble. Like, my mom would, like, be like, he's your dad, like, why aren't you, and stuff like that, which I kind of get, because I think back and I know that it probably hurt her feelings, hurt his feelings, me rejecting my dad like that. But in a way, that's teaching children that they have no control over their bodies. If they are not comfortable with somebody hugging them, whether it's family or not, because let's be real here, there's a lot of cases in which children are abused by their own family. So I think this has a lot to do with it. The children are taught to be respectful, quote unquote, be respectful and let them hug you. Like, no, they have their own boundaries, and they need to be taught that it is okay to say, no, I don't want to be touched right now. I don't want to be hugged. Or even like the boys, I heard it in the podcast as well. Like the girl was like the mom was teaching the son to always ask for permission, right? Like, you want to teach the boys, like, hey, is it okay if I give you a hug? Or is it okay if I walk this way? Or whatever, just boundaries. Teaching that we need to not overstep other people's boundaries is super important. And I think that has a lot to do with relationships as well, because those kids that just feel that they have no control over their boundaries, those are the types of people that don't realize that now as adults, you can say, I don't like when you do this to me. I don't like when you talk to me this way. And there's no breaking the cycle if you cannot stand up for yourself. If you don't realize that it is okay to set boundaries, there's nothing wrong with that. Learning to say no, and just choosing partners that respect when you say no. So going back to the book, I even bookmarked it because I thought that was so important, right? I was like, this is true. In a marriage, you cannot, or in any relationship, in fact, you cannot love somebody else until you know how to love yourself. And that takes work sometimes. It does not come naturally to everybody. Some people were raised differently and are now having to reteach themselves or reprogram themselves a different way. So I think that being understanding of your partner is super important, right? And each person working on improving themselves. Because I don't think it's a 1 day, 1 month, 1 year, 5-year thing. I think this is just ongoing. And it's going to probably be ongoing for the rest of your life. I mean, that's important. That's important in a relationship, to be able to each of you work on things that you each need to work on. And I can tell you that only doing that will you have a better relationship. So, in summary, what I learned from this book was that, first of all, I'm waiting for somebody to read it, because I do want to ask, I want to like pick somebody's brain when it comes to that topic. Like, these were two people that hated each other. They trauma bonded, basically. But can you really call that love? Like, is it love if they've trauma bonded? I mean, because I feel like well, maybe. Because I feel like as teachers, and obviously this is not the same, obviously at a lower level, but they say teachers trauma bond, right? This is why me and my bestie get along so well, because we've been through the same thing. Like, these children are out here traumatizing us. These little itty bitty third graders can't even walk the streets on their own. And they're over here traumatizing us, making us doubt ourselves, lowering my self-esteem. Guys, they've made fun of my hair. They've made fun of my accent, the way I say things, and I still love them. But that's besides the point. I guess trauma can make you love somebody else. Trauma bonding is a thing. But after the fact, so for example, I never thought about when a crime is committed, right? So something happened to these people. When the crime is committed, and let's say that you make it out, together, how is life then? And I've never thought about like those people that are kidnapped and then they come back alive, obviously, and like, what is life after that? After they've seen their life flash before their eyes multiple times sometimes, and now they're like, oh, should we go to school? Like, do we go get an ice cream? Like, I'm so thrown by that whole situation. Maybe I should go, but you guys think I should go back to school and be a counselor or something? You think I'd be a good counselor? You know what? I don't know if I would be a good counselor, because if I was a counselor, I think I'd be sobbing with each and every one of those patients. And I don't know if they take me seriously after that, Like, my job is to make them feel better, and I'm over here crying with them. So maybe not a counselor. But that's besides the point. What I learned in this book was that you need to love yourself, right? But also, loving yourself does not necessarily mean that you're going to wait to find the perfect person, because let's not forget, we are all imperfect human beings, and you will just be single, ready to mingle for the rest of your life. And, some of you, it might work. Some of you may want a little bit of company. But just knowing that you're not waiting for the perfect one. You just have to first of all, be ready yourself. Love yourself. Know that you are worth it, and know that you are worth the love and attention and effort that the other person places in this relationship. And if they're not giving that effort into the relationship the way that you are putting into that relationship by loving yourself, then you better be running. Because no, we're not using the excuse of them not responding to a text until 7 p.m. with, we have too much I had too much on my plate. I was like, no. That's not an excuse, because the next time we go out, that same plate better be the one that you're paying for, not me. Or why are we out here building this other person up? We're building them up when they can't even build a text message back? Absolutely not. We are not doing that anymore. We're not, because we know that we are worth more. And see, now I'm getting heated, you guys. Now I'm getting heated because I'm thinking back to my younger self, and I'm saying, why? Because I'm a good time. I'm a blast. I'm a blast in a glass. I am the epitome of fun. So if I have to beg you, if anybody, if you're out there and you have to beg someone to love you, then my dearest friend, you do not need love. You need therapy. Because even if in that moment they show you quote unquote love, you are never gonna be satisfied. You are never gonna be filled. Your void is never gonna be filled because it is never gonna be enough because you don't know how to love yourself. We were talking about parenting scams the other time. Talk about relationship scams, okay? Because if their love comes with conditions, expiration dates, and terms and conditions may apply in small print that you could barely read, then that's not a relationship, that's a scam. Self-love is knowing that if the love is not full-time with benefits, PTO, and emotionally charged, then I'm sorry, but you better quit. Quit, get out of there. Real life. So I'm going to say it one more time, though. Stop accepting expired ass love and start treating yourself like the main character that you are. But also, for all the people that are already in committed relationships and maybe not getting as much out, know that you could still fix this. Because as long as both of you guys are willing to work on each other, like him work on himself, her work on herself, whatever the case may be, everybody's going to be working on themselves. That's the plan, all right? That's the game plan for today. We are each going to work on our issues, our, challenges. We are going to learn to love ourselves. We are going to learn that validation does not need, and that's the key word, need, because I will still accept all of the validation if you want to give it to me. But we don't need it from anybody else because we know damn well how amazing we are and how lovable we are and how much we deserve all the things in the world. Have a chat with your partner. As long as he's trying to work on himself or herself and you guys are willing to put in that effort to make this relationship work, it could still work, you guys. It could still work. So don't give up so easily. Have grace for yourself and for your partner and just keep working on yourselves. That's all I can say about that. But we all learn from our mistakes, right? So I often get bored and would love it if y'all would DM me some extra I didn't love myself dating moments. That way we can laugh together. That way we can, really learn from our mistakes together. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go on Instagram if you have Instagram, and you're going to follow me. Here it is. Ready? Get ready. Get a pen. You have a pen ready? All right, here we go. It is chaotic, CHAOTIC _vibes. But I need to be different. So I had to be VIBEZ, chaotic _vibes _podcast, PODCAST. Chaotic Vibes Podcast. Follow me on there and feel free to DM me. I really, really would like to hear from you guys. Number one, what kind of childhood did you have and how has that affected your relationships? And number two, give me some juicy stuff. I'm trying to learn from your guys' mistakes, just like I'm hoping you learn from mine. So tell me about your I didn't love myself moment. What is it? I would like to know. You can also follow me on TikTok at Jen Estrada88. Jen Estrada88, help me get to that 10K, you guys. I'm halfway there. Help me get there, and let's just have some fun together on there. It's always a blast when Jen's in the house. But when there's more of us in the house, in this club, we all fam. Okay, let me stop because I'm giving myself the ick. cringy moment. Oh, and let me know how many of those squirrels you heard along the way, because I'm actually trying to work on that. I'm working on my self-love, but I'm also working on my ADHD tendencies, and following squirrels down deep dark holes is definitely something that I need to work on. So let me know how many you caught. Again, follow me on Instagram, Chaotic Vibes Podcast, and TikTok, Jen Estrada 88. Thank you for always joining and listening in. I will catch you on the flip side. See ya.